This is the Holy Land Timeline, bringing the Bible to life from the Holy Land.
Walking the ground where history meets faith. You're listening to the Holy Land Path on the Holy Land Timeline. Here are your hosts, Ethan and Sarah.
Welcome to the Holy Land Path. Grace and peace to you from the land of the covenant. You know, it is a profound privilege to walk alongside you again today as we explore the physical, tangible remnants of the past.
It really is. I mean, we're talking about the heavy, stubborn materials that ancient hands actually pulled right from the earth, transported, and shaped.
Exactly. And that concept of shaping is entirely at the core of what we are unpacking in this deep dive today.
Right, because the mission of our deep dive is to explore three entirely distinct archaeological discoveries that have just recently come to light across the region.
And on the surface, they seem completely unrelated. I mean, we've got underwater metallurgy, remote sensing in the Golan Heights, and the Byzantine Baptismal Hall.
Yeah, it sounds like a random assortment, but the connective tissue between them is how they reveal the astonishing ways ancient inhabitants interacted with their physical environment.
Which perfectly brings us to our spiritual theme, our lesson of the week for this journey. And that is heritage and purposeful shaping.
That's such a great way to frame it.
Because when you peel back the layers of history, the story of faith and civilization here isn't just about abstract ideas. It's a story told through raw materials.
Absolutely. It's about iron violently pulled from the earth or mats of basalt fieldstones gathered across these sweeping plains and precious oils being consecrated.
Right. These materials didn't just passively exist. They were moved across terrifying distances to build empires and to mark a chaotic landscape with order.
And ultimately to consecrate the souls of new believers. It fundamentally changes how you view a museum artifact, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. You stop seeing just an object and you start seeing the immense human intention behind it.
Exactly. You ask what kind of society can move tons of raw iron across open water or build 30 massive stone circles.
Yeah, or carve a specific marble block just to hold sacred oils. You start seeing the architecture of the human mind reflected in the physical world.
So let's head straight into the waters of the Dor Lagoon for our first discovery.
Yes, let's do it. Picture the scene. The Mediterranean sun is beating down, the water off the Carmel coast is this brilliant blue, and researchers from the University of Haifa are systematically surveying the seabed.
Right, a team led by Professor Zila Eshel.
And sitting right there, scattered in the lagoon, they find 9 heavy loaves of raw iron. Now, for anyone who knows basic chemistry, finding ancient iron in salt water should be an absolute impossibility.
It's a total archaeological paradox. I mean, we're talking about the late 7th or early 6th century BCE.
Which is roughly 2,600 years ago.
Right. To find iron from that era submerged in a highly oxygenated, hypersaline environment like the Mediterranean, well, it challenges our basic understanding of oxidation.
Wait, hold on, though. Let's establish a timeline first before we get into the chemistry of the preservation.
Sure.
Because pinning down a date for a rock underwater seems incredibly difficult. I mean, how do we know these aren't just cannonballs from an 18th century frigate? How do you carbon date metal?
Well, the short answer is you can't. You can't carbon date the metal itself, which is what makes this discovery so exquisitely fortunate.
Oh, wow. So what did they find?
When the researchers brought these heavy lumps to the surface and did their microanalysis, they found a piece of a burnt branch trapped deep inside one of the iron masses.
No way. Like from the original fire.
Exactly. During the original smelting process, a piece of the charcoal fuel just became embedded in the molten hot mass and was sealed inside as the metal cooled.
That is like the ultimate time capsule. A single twig perfectly sealed in an iron tomb for 2.5 millennia.
It's amazing, and because charcoal is organic, it contains carbon-14. So by extracting that specific trapped wood and using accelerator mass spectrometry, they pinpointed the smelting fire to that late 7th, early 6th century BCE window.
Which is such a critical date, because if you look at the geopolitical map of the Middle East at that time, you were looking at a world completely on fire.
Oh, absolute chaos, the era of the great imperial collisions.
Right, the Neo-Assyrian Empire is finally collapsing. Nineveh falls. And rising up, you have the Neo-Babylonian Empire under figures like Nebuchadnezzar.
And meanwhile, down south, the Egyptians are marching north through the Levant, trying to assert their own dominance.
Yeah, the land of Israel is essentially the buffer zone, this highway where massive armies are colliding. And the currency of that warfare, the material that dictates who rules, is iron.
Iron was the strategic equivalent of enriched uranium in the ancient world. It built the chariots, tipped the spears, and forged the plowshares to feed those armies.
But to understand why finding these specific lumps at Dor is so revolutionary, we really have to talk about the brutal reality of ancient metallurgy, right?
We do, because making iron in 600 BCE was nothing like modern steel mills. It wasn't even like bronze making.
Right. If you were imagining an ancient blacksmith pouring glowing liquid metal into a mold, you just have to erase that from your mind.
Yeah, that works for copper or bronze because they melt at lower temperatures. But pure iron melts at over 1,500 degrees Celsius.
Which is over 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit. The ancient world just didn't possess the technology to force a furnace to reach that kind of thermal threshold.
Right, they couldn't reach the liquidus point of iron, so they relied on a chemical workaround called the bloomery process.
How does that work?
Well, they'd build a specialized clay or stone structure, a bloomery furnace, and pack it with iron ore and charcoal. Then they'd pump air into the base using leather bellows for hours, maybe days.
Just manually pumping bellows for days.
Exactly. And that raises the temperature to about 1,200 degrees Celsius. At this heat, the carbon monoxide gas from the burning charcoal strips the oxygen away from the iron oxide ore.
Ah, a reduction reaction. The gas is literally stealing the oxygen atoms, leaving the pure iron behind.
Yes, but since it isn't hot enough to melt, the iron doesn't pool. Instead, it forms this spongy, glowing, semi-solid mass.
And the ore isn't pure, right? It has a lot of silica and stuff.
Right, all those impurities do melt at that temperature, forming a liquid waste product called slag. And this slag runs through the pores of that spongy iron mass.
So when they break the furnace open, it's not a clean brick of iron. It's a bloom.
Yes, a heavy, porous amalgamation of solid iron intertwined with a thick, glassy matrix of slag.
The researchers actually called it an iron inflorescence in the translation. It sounds like a beautiful metallic flower, but it's actually a chaotic, glowing hot rock of metal and waste.
That's a great way to describe it. And this brings us to the mechanics of the blacksmith. A bloom fresh from the furnace is completely useless as a tool.
Right, so the blacksmith has to take that white-hot bloom, put it on an anvil, and beat it relentlessly with a heavy hammer.
That hammering process is called shingling. It forcefully expels the molten slag from the iron matrix. It literally squishes the liquid glass out of the solid sponge.
While welding the iron particles together into a solid billet so you can actually forge a sword or a plow.
Exactly. Which brings us to the absolute crux of this underwater mystery.
Right. If a blacksmith's entire job is to hammer that slag out the second it comes out of the furnace, why are there 9 heavy, entirely unworked blooms sitting at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea?
Did a blacksmith just give up and toss them in the ocean?
Right. That's the anomaly that completely rewrites our understanding of ancient economics. These blooms were never hammered.
Never. When modern researchers sliced one open in the lab with a diamond saw and looked under an electron microscope, there was zero evidence of compression.
The delicate spongy iron and the original slag were perfectly intact. And ironically, that lack of hammering is the only reason they survived, right?
It is. I mean, if you drop a hammered iron sword from 600 BCE into the Mediterranean, the salt and dissolved oxygen trigger rapid galvanic corrosion. It's gone in a few centuries.
Just an orange stain on the sand. But because these blooms were unworked, they were still encased in that thick, natural crust of glassy slag.
And slag is highly resistant to corrosion. It essentially acted as an ancient, incredibly durable shrink wrap.
Wow, so it sealed the iron off from the seawater?
Plus, over time, a layer of marine biofouling, barnacles and sand built up over the slag, creating a microanaerobic environment. The iron was chemically frozen in time.
Nature's perfect preservation system. But we still have that burning question. What were they doing on the seabed at Dor? How did they get there?
The answer shows the sheer sophistication of the ancient world. This is the earliest known archaeological evidence of the maritime transport of entirely unworked iron.
Really? So the industry wasn't just a local village operation?
Not at all. It proves the ancient iron industry was a highly compartmentalized, macroeconomic, global supply chain.
We really have to rethink that village blacksmith model. The guy making swords in the coastal city wasn't the guy mining the ore.
Exactly. Smelting is an incredibly dirty, highly specialized process. You need massive amounts of ore and huge forests of timber for charcoal. You don't do that inside a crowded port city like Dor.
Right, you do it at distant industrial sites, like up in the mountains or even over in Cyprus or Anatolia.
It's basically the ancient equivalent of the modern tech industry. Minerals mined in one hemisphere, fabricated in another, and assembled in a third.
That is the perfect framework for it. So those distant smelters produced the raw blooms, let them cool with the slag intact, and sold them as raw bulk commodities.
And then these heavy blooms were loaded onto Phoenician or Canaanite merchant galleys and sent out onto the treacherous Mediterranean trade routes.
Where local blacksmiths at urban centers would buy them, reheat them, and finally hammer them into weapons or tools.
Yes, so the 9 blooms found at Dor are likely the remnants of a shipwreck, or cargo hastily jettisoned during a storm to keep a vessel from sinking.
Carrying the raw potential of empire right in its hold. It requires so much trust, too. A blacksmith buying that slag-covered rock has to trust the quality of the iron inside.
Absolutely. The trade networks had to have a standardized understanding of what a bloom was worth, even when the product was hidden beneath waste.
It just shows us that even during this huge geopolitical upheaval, they had this highly organized supply chain. Going back to our theme, they were actively extracting stubborn resources and shaping the raw potential of the earth.
It is a stunning testament to human ingenuity, and it sets up a really fascinating contrast with our second discovery.
Oh, definitely. We're moving from the horizontal expanse of the sea to the deliberate movement of massive raw materials across the rugged vertical landscape of the earth.
We are trading the blue depths of the Mediterranean for the wind-swept volcanic heights of the Golan.
And we are looking at a material that is just as stubborn as iron. Basalt.
To understand the gravity of this discovery, you have to understand the environment of the Golan Heights. It's essentially a massive volcanic plateau.
Right. Millions of years of lava flows cooling into dense, dark basalt.
And over millennia, weather fractured this basalt into billions of heavy, jagged fieldstones that just litter the landscape.
It's a harsh, dramatic environment. And right in the middle of it is a site known as Rouge Melhiri, or Gilgal Rephaim in Hebrew, the Wheel of Giants.
Often dubbed Israel's Stonehenge by the press.
Yeah. It is this massive prehistoric monument with 5 concentric stone circles. The outermost circle is over 150 meters across. We are talking 40,000 tons of basalt stones stacked into walls that were up to 8 meters high.
It's an architectural leviathan, and for over 50 years, it has completely baffled the archaeological community.
Because they've debated its age, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere in the Chalcolithic or early Bronze Age, roughly 3,000 to 4,000 BCE.
Right, and they've debated its function. Was it an observatory, a fortress, or a burial complex? There's a large dolmen tomb right at its center.
But the biggest mystery was the where. For half a century, Rouge Melhiri was viewed as an entirely isolated anomaly.
Which structurally makes no sociological sense. A prehistoric society doesn't organize the staggering labor to move 40,000 tons of rock for one singular masterpiece and then never build anything similar again.
Right, a society capable of that level of purposeful shaping has a deep architectural vocabulary. There had to be more. But the Golan Heights fiercely protects its secrets.
If you've ever hiked off-trail in the Golan, you know why traditional archaeology struggled. The terrain is brutal. The basalt twists your ankles. The seasonal vegetation obscures the ground.
Plus the modern geopolitical reality. There are active military zones and old Syrian minefields. You can't just walk a grid over this landscape safely.
Which is exactly why a team from Ben Gurion University, led by Dr. Michael Birkenfeld, decided to bypass the ground entirely. They brought 21st century aerospace technology to a prehistoric puzzle.
Yes, the Remote Sensing Project. Analyzing the landscape using high-resolution, multispectral satellite imagery.
Let's unpack the methodology here because it's brilliant. How do you see a prehistoric wall buried under dirt and grass?
Well, you look for the stress in the environment.
Exactly. Imagine a massive buried basalt wall. The soil directly over it is much shallower than the deep soil just a few feet away. The human eye can't see the difference, but a plant knows.
Because the roots hit the rock.
Right. In the harsh dry season, a plant growing over that buried wall will exhaust the moisture in its shallow soil much faster than the nearby plants.
So it gets stressed out.
Yes. Its cellular structure changes. The chlorophyll breaks down. To the naked eye, the grass still looks green. But in the near-infrared spectrum, the stressed plants reflect light completely differently.
It's like the landscape is wearing a biological mood ring. The researchers look at the infrared data and suddenly, the geometric ghost of a massive stone circle appears.
And they combined that botanical data with highly specific temporal imaging. They programmed the satellites to take images during the dead of winter, specifically at dawn and dusk around the solstice.
Oh, because of the shadows.
Exactly. When the sun is at its lowest angle, the light rakes across the landscape. A rise in the ground of even 10 centimeters casts a long, high-contrast shadow.
They gave the entire Golan Heights a high-definition MRI, and the results are just a complete paradigm shift. They discovered nearly 30 previously undocumented massive stone circles.
All within a 25-kilometer radius of Rujim el-Hiri. It completely obliterates the idea that it was an isolated phenomenon.
Okay, but we have to address the elephant in the room. 30 massive stone circles, each 50 meters across. How does humanity misplace 30 giant circles for 50 years?
It's a great question. And the reason they were invisible from the ground isn't just dirt and grass. It is about the intense pragmatism of subsequent generations. Rujim el-Hiri survived because it was so massive, maybe a taboo site, but these new circles are poorly preserved.
Because ancient builders are the ultimate scavengers, the basalt recycling program.
Think about it. A Roman-era farmer or a Byzantine shepherd moves in thousands of years later. You need a sheep pen or a terrace. Quarrying new basalt from bedrock is agonizing labor.
So you look out, see a ruined prehistoric wall, and realize you have a free, pre-quarried hardware store right in your backyard.
Exactly. Subsequent populations systematically dismantled these massive circles. They hauled away the upper stones, leaving only the deep foundational stones, which were swallowed by soil.
So if you stand there today, you don't see a monument. You just see a chaotic jumble of rocks in a landscape entirely defined by chaotic jumbles of rocks.
You literally cannot see the circle for the basalt. It's only from the satellite's God's eye view that the overarching geometry snaps into focus.
So what did the researchers find when they mapped these 30 new sites? Is there a blueprint?
Yes, a remarkably consistent architectural vocabulary. They average 50 meters in diameter with thick outer circular walls, concentric inner rings, and radial partition walls connecting them to create internal chambers.
Massive prehistoric floor plans. And their location is strategic too, right?
Highly strategic. They are almost universally situated on gentle slopes or small plateaus, directly adjacent to seasonal water drainages, the wadis.
So we have an entire society purposefully shaping millions of heavy stones into 30 geometric nodes anchored to the water network.
It looks exactly like the infrastructure of a vast, highly organized pastoral society. During the Chalcolithic and early Bronze Ages, the economy depended heavily on herding livestock.
So these nomadic groups moved with the seasons. And these massive circles were basically mega convention centers crossed with livestock corrals.
In a way, yes. Imagine the winter rains. The wadis flow. Grass is rich. Different tribes converge on these specific monumentally marked locations. The massive walls provide a secure enclosure for thousands of animals.
But it's not just about the sheep. You have the core of human civilization happening inside. Exchange of information, trading goods like copper for basalt tools.
Arranging marriages for genetic diversity and political alliances. And the performance of shared rituals. These circular structures, reflecting the sun and moon, were sacred theaters.
It's breathtaking. Rujim el-Hiri isn't a lonely anomaly. It's the high cathedral of a massive, interconnected landscape of stone.
They looked at the chaotic basalt and, through staggering communal effort, imposed an enduring, purposeful shape upon it.
They transformed a geological reality into a theological and social home. Take a moment to let these discoveries sink in as we listen to a melody of the land.
Enjoy the music.
I used to try to map it out, every turn and every mile, running circles in the dark, trying to find a reason to smile. But the more I tried to hold it tight, the more it slipped away, like trying to catch the morning mist at the breaking of the day. So I sat down on these wooden steps and let the shadows fall, realizing that the one who made it holds it after all. Trust in him with all your heart and let the rest go by, like a red-tailed hawk just drifting through A wide and open sky. Lean not on what you think you know, or what your eyes can see. There's a grander plan unfolding in a perfect mystery. Yeah, I'm finding my direction while I'm sitting perfectly still, watching grace move like the sunlight, dancing on the hill. In the creak of this old rocking chair, in the cricket's evening song, I'm finding where I started, and I'm finding where I belong. It ain't about the things I've done or the trophies on the shelf. It's about the love that found me when I couldn't find myself. Every breath is like a blessing, every moment is a gift. I can feel the heavy burden starting to finally shift. He knows the way, he knows the time, he knows the very end. The creator of the universe and my closest friend. Trust in him with all your heart and let the rest go by. Like a red-tailed hawk just drifting through a wide and open sky. Lean not on what you think you know, or what your eyes can see. There's a grander plan unfolding in a perfect mystery. Yeah, I'm finding my direction while I'm sitting perfectly still, watching grace move like the sunlight, dancing on the hill. Just trust in him. Yeah, let the rest go by.
Welcome back to the Holy Land Path. We have spent the first half of our journey exploring how the ancients mastered their sprawling outdoor environments.
From navigating the Mediterranean to organizing massive basalt fieldstones across the Golan.
But for our final stop, we are undergoing a profound shift in scale and intimacy. We are transitioning from grand, public outdoor gatherings to a deeply personal, sacred indoor space. We are stepping inside an ancient Byzantine baptismal hall.
And to do that, we are traveling to one of the most dramatically situated ancient cities in the region, Hippos, also deeply known by its Aramaic name, Sussita.
Sussita means horse, right? Because the mountain it sits on supposedly looks like the neck and back of a horse.
Yes, exactly. And the topography is stunning. It's a massive diamond-shaped mountain with sheer cliffs on almost all sides, rising dramatically above the eastern shore of the Sea of Galilee.
It provides this absolutely commanding view of the lake. It was one of the cities of the Decapolis, right?
It was. But we are focusing on the Byzantine period, roughly the 4th to the 7th century CE. The Roman Empire has Christianized, and Sussita transforms into a powerful bishopric.
It's a fascinating geographical irony. The eastern shore of the Sea of Galilee is associated with the early rural ministry of Jesus. And yet, centuries later, Sussita is the only major Christian urban center located directly around the lake.
It was a city of soaring basilicas. Archaeologists from the University of Haifa, led by Dr. Michael Eisenberg and Dr. Arleta Kowaleska, have been meticulously excavating there.
And the specific site we're looking at is the Cathedral of Sussita, built around the year 591 CE.
Which stood as a spiritual epicenter for a century and a half until it met a sudden, violent end. In the year 749 CE, the earth tore itself apart.
The catastrophic earthquake.
Yes, the region sits right on the Dead Sea Transform fault line. The massive stone columns fractured, the walls buckled, and the incredibly heavy timber and tile roof came crashing down.
Obliterating the interior and entirely destroying the city. Sussita was abandoned. But from an archaeological perspective, that sudden collapse is the greatest gift, a Pompeii effect.
Exactly. That heavy roof acted as a colossal ceiling vault. Unlike the stone circles of the Golan, the interior of the cathedral was instantaneously buried. No scavengers ever came. It was frozen in suspended animation for 1,200 years.
Waiting in darkness for modern archaeologists. And what they uncovered in the southern annex is reshaping our understanding of early Christian ritual.
They reveal a secondary, dedicated baptismal hall. The cathedral already had a primary baptistery for adults, but this newly discovered hall was designed exclusively for infants and small children.
It is currently the only known church in the region, with 2 separate dedicated baptismal halls operating simultaneously. And the congregants actually left a label.
They did. An inscription in the mosaic floor explicitly refers to this space as the photosterion.
The Hall of Illumination. That name is just so beautifully evocative. It speaks volumes about the theology. You aren't just undergoing a washing, you are being illuminated.
And the artifacts excavated from the rubble perfectly mirror that purpose. Clustered around the child-sized font, they found the largest bronze lampstand ever found in a Byzantine excavation in Israel.
Which perfectly aligns with the illumination concept. Just imagine the heavy golden light casting across the marble walls.
They also found a massive marble reliquary for holy relics. But the centerpiece was something much smaller and entirely unprecedented.
Yes, a relatively small rectangular block of solid marble. And carved meticulously into the polished top surface are 3 distinct, perfectly smooth hemispherical depressions.
A totally unique artifact. Researchers studied sites all across the Middle East and the Mediterranean. This object has absolutely no known parallel.
Reading the reports, it physically resembles a painter's palette, or a sterile tray a surgeon uses to organize instruments. But instead of scalpels, it held 3 distinct spiritual medicines.
That's a very accurate functional analogy. Baptism was a complex multi-stage procedure. This block was custom designed by the local community to hold the 3 distinct holy oils for the anointing sequence.
So let's break down that procedure. Why 3 oils? What's happening inside the Hall of Illumination?
Well, by the 6th century, infant baptism was emphasized to wash away original sin immediately, but the liturgy wasn't rigidly standardized across the whole empire.
They didn't just download a PDF from Constantinople.
Right. The liturgy developed organically and varied from diocese to diocese. The rituals at Sussita were uniquely tailored to their traditions. This 3-depression marble palette strongly indicates a specific 3-stage anointing process.
So what are the 3 oils?
Drawing from broader practices, the first depression likely held the oil of exorcism, applied before touching the water as a spiritual antiseptic to drive out demonic influences.
Stage 1, purge the darkness.
The second depression held the oil of catechumens, a fortifying oil applied to the chest and back, spiritual armor for the lifelong battle against sin.
Stage 2, fortify the soul. And then comes the water immersion.
Yes, and immediately after we come to the third depression on the marble block. It held the chrism, or myron, a profoundly rich mixture of oil, balsam, myrrh, and aromatic spices consecrated by the bishop.
Stage 3, sealing the vessel. The priest anoints the child's forehead, eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. Just think about the sensory experience. The bronze lampstand blazing, chanted prayers echoing, the splash of water, and that rich fragrance of the chrism.
It engages every sense to communicate a transcendent reality. And this artifact forces us to confront a limitation in how we study ancient religion. We rely so much on texts from imperial centers.
But texts only tell you what authorities said should happen.
Well, archaeology shows you what the local community actually did on a Tuesday morning. The localized nuances at Sussita were likely never written down. They were carved into stone.
Which brings us full circle to heritage and purposeful shaping. Someone in that community took raw marble, considered their local theological needs, and shaped it to hold the mediums of grace.
It is the ultimate expression of humanity marrying the physical material of the earth to the transcendent beliefs of the soul.
It truly is. And looking back over our journey, it is breathtaking how these disparate discoveries interlock. We began underwater with raw iron blooms preserved by ugly, thick slag, moving across global supply chains.
Then we ascended to the Golan Heights, relying on satellite light to see how pastoralists organized heavy basalt into massive geometric circles for trade and sacred communion.
And finally, we stepped into the intimate ruins of the Cathedral of Sussita, frozen by an earthquake, moving from empires to a single marble block holding sacred oils for a new life. It's an unbroken human drive to shape the physical world for provision, community, and faith.
And as we conclude, I want to leave you with a final thought. Consider the ruins or unworked materials in your own life. We've seen how a devastating earthquake perfectly preserved sacred artifacts. We've seen how ugly silicate slag protected the raw potential of ancient iron. Sometimes what looks like rubble or waste is actually a profound layer of preservation.
That's incredible.
So ask yourself, what hidden raw potential is currently sitting in the environment of your own life, perhaps protected by the very chaotic circumstances you thought were destroying it, just waiting for the right moment and tools to be purposefully formed into something enduring?
What a beautiful, challenging question to carry with us into the week. If you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe and follow the Holy Land Path on this platform so you never miss a discovery. Be sure to hit the follow button to stay connected with the footsteps of the Lord in His land. May the peace of Jerusalem be with you. We leave you with this melody of faith. God bless you.
I'm 1,000 miles from where I used to be, with a heavy heart and a prayer that's setting me free. The road is long and the wind is blowing cold, but I'm holding on to the stories I've been told. It ain't in the shadows, it ain't in the fear. I can feel His presence as I'm shifting the gear. And I find Him in the sunrise, on a lonely interstate, in the strength to keep on moving, and the courage to wait. He's the fire in my spirit, the steady in the soul, the one who takes a broken and makes it all whole. I don't need a palace or a crown made of gold. I find my God in the grace that's yet to unfold. In the work of my hands and the sweat on my face, in the quiet determination to finish the race. He's the echo in the canyon, the light on the hill, the voice that tells the storm to just be still. I see Him in the strangers and the friends that I meet, in the dust of the road and the rhythm of my feet. The world is wide and the mountains are tall, but He's the hand that catches me whenever I fall. From the valley floor to the highest blue sky, I see His glory in the twinkle of an eye. Yeah, He's right here in the dust of the road